Good morning, Matthew.
Good morning.
Again. Um, so I think I mentioned this yesterday. I would like to work on Take Me Home Old Fay Roads this
You did
morning.
mention that.
Um, so I've been kind of fiddling with a lot of things. Um, I want to use, I think we discussed this numerous times. Um, I want to use Cairn. I
Okay.
think we fiddled with it that one day, and we both agreed, wow, this is pretty pretty tight,
Yes.
easy to make characters quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Hey, Super Spike.
hey, Super Spike. Okay, so let me get my screen saved, shared.
How you doing this morning, Spike?
And I gotta shut my Zomboid game down because the music's playing in the background. It's driving me flipping nuts. Because I was playing Zomboid before we started.
Of course you are.
Well, not of course. Don't say it like that, Matt.
You're a Zomboid boy. Nothing wrong with
I haven't played in a while. The last 3 days have been hard though. I've been back hard on it.
that.
I go through stretches where I get real, like,
Real
kind of
Zomboid.
real burnout on it.
Oh,
Then
yeah.
I'll go through phases where I'm like, this is all I want to do. So I've got my bad at games game. That's for bad at games. So I went back this morning and I was like, we're gonna give my brother another chance. So we spawned him in, and this time no fucking Trans Am, which sucks,
Oh,
but no zombies there when we spawned in on day one.
well, that's good.
So I'm securing the compound. But also what I realize is, man, that's a really big place. And how come there's no food?
Oh,
Like there's very little food. So I'm gonna have to go pretty quickly, get to go out and get food because I'm like, I have very little food. Also compared to the other places I've been. Hey, Brian! Other places I've been this morning in that town area, there's very few like good um, utilitarian tools, as
mm.
well as no firearms.
Oh,
Which I'm far enough away from like the town portion. Even I'm like so far on the outskirts. I mean, I can fish for food, I guess. I mean, but then I'm very vulnerable.
yeah.
But anyway, so take me home, Old Fay Road. Um, so on the other side of Kaskar, miles into the unsettled country, there's this thing called the Fingers. And what I want the Fingers to be is like this massive lake with like 5 large tributaries coming out.
Okay.
Um, and these are like the 7 communities that remain, but they were so cut off from everything else because like the where Restwell Keep is basically we've said is like the pier of the peak or the point of the spear of civilization, right?
Okay.
That's nice. Um, that's like where civilization is finally carving its way back into this area post chaos scar. That when the scar happens, when whatever falls from the sky, it destroys this entire area. It
Mm.
wipes civilization off the map. And what I want this unsettled country area, this Fay Road area to be, these are folks who have been cut off for like thousands of years. So they've had to adapt, and they are more like small town. This should be very rural. I think I was kind of like should be a little tinges of like folk horror in this, but not and more fairy tale ended than like what I'm doing, in like Chaos Scar and what I'm doing in Down Outlands. So another thing I immediately want to take is I've been playing the game Wilder Myth, which is superb. and one of the things it has is like these rocks that fell from the sky that have magical properties. And but what happens is when they're finally revealed in the ground, they glow, right? But many of them were like meteor impacts, so they made small bodies of water. So the water is kind of magical in itself, but it like gives off this like they call it like they call it like star water because when the night comes, the water looks like the stars. It looks like it's reflecting, but it's even brighter. I love that kind of like very um fairy tale esque, I guess, kind of fantasy feeling. The other
Yeah.
thing, so another component is like because I'm still not sure how races work in Cairn or if they are even a part of Cairn at all. Is when the I don't know we'll just call it an extinction event happens. The elves leave.
Mm.
Elves go back to the Feywild. They're like, nope, we have a place to go. Fuck everybody else. We're abandoning the world to go back to the first world. Back with our Eladrin cousins, we're done. So they leave, and they take a lot of the like other, like a lot of halflings leave, and the dwarves go back underground. They're like, we can survive this, but we have to dig. They offer other races to come with them, and they're just like, you're not very hardy. You probably won't survive, but you won't survive up here. And they dig into the Underdark.
Mm.
So,
Shaggy.
hey, Shaggy. So that leaves like the humans and the halflings and half elves, half orcs, kind of like to fend for themselves. And like I said, I want there to be at least 2 large cities in this area that are completely ruins.
Okay.
They're like basically above ground dungeons. In fact, I'm thinking 3 and 1 would be underwater.
Gotta have a water level.
Yeah. Well, I want that large lake to say some of what was left basically goes into the water.
Mm.
We have mer people, and they live in this massive it's almost like a inland sea rather than a lake.
Okay.
And that's where they live. And it's people who made a pact with something, and it changed them so they could survive. But so there's always small communities, right?
Or depending on how hard you want to rip off Alan Moore, they could just be vampires.
I don't want to rip off Alan Moore. We know my feeling about Alan.
Yeah, but that was such a great concept.
It is, but it's one of them. Yeah, I don't want to take away one of the only great things he's done independently. I don't. Yeah, I don't want to.
No.
That's his accomplishment. I would, God forbid, someone build off his accomplishments, because we know he would never. Sorry, I'm salty.
You are.
Yeah, Gungan style Brian is a really good way of putting it. Kind of, except for less horribly racial stereotype. Come on, George, be better. So one thing that's happened over time is because of these stones, there's very, very weak barriers between the Feywild and the Shadowfell all over this area.
Mm.
So you can literally be walking and wander your way right into the Feywild and the Shadowfell. And the Feywild section, which is kind of like, if you think about it, like it's operating in the same space in like a different plane. So the elves just went there. So if you go there, they're like not having it. I want straight up xenophobic fuckhead elves. Like elves should be somewhat of an antagonist. I think it's just kind of like they're haughty, very much like you're coming from the world we left a long time ago, and we don't know why you're here, and frankly, we don't care. Go away, or your head's going to be on a pike. And then the Shadowfell is just a scary fucking place. Um, I also want to like. I'm trying to stay away from like monsters that I use a lot.
Okay.
So I'm gonna, still trying to stay away from like goblins. Trying to stay away from gnolls. So I'm really trying to whittle down like monsters that I use. So I'm thinking about using like giants.
Hmm.
I want to use trolls, and then Cobalt Press has a thing called Trollkin, which are they're like folks who are imbued with the essence of trolls, but they're not full blown trolls. Um, I want to use the Grung, which are a D&D race, but I want to alter them because I'm using Bullywugs in Chaos Scar. The Grung are like poisonous dart frog versions of Bullywugs. And they're super like hierarchical. They have a hierarchy because I can't say the other word apparently today. Based upon coloration, poison level, and they're also extremely like mean. Well, I just want to use them as like not that. I just want there to be like a frog people, like or just like hey, maybe they fell out of or wandered out of the Feywild like a couple hundred years ago and couldn't find their way back. So now they live here. We live here now. My Minecraft philosophy. I want to use hags because, like I said, folk horror and fairy tale.
Yep.
I want to use nature spirits, which there is a thing called the Chwinga, which are kind of like tiny nature spirit guys that are like very Studio Ghibli in nature. But I also want to use yokai.
Ah, yes. I love the yokai.
So I kind of want to make this like not godless area, but I want to make it kind of like we survived without you. Where were you when this calamity happened? So instead, it's a lot of like communing with nature and like, you're blessed if you have like a bunch of yokai who live in your house. Who do things. There's bad yokai, but the majority, if you like treat them well and like, give offerings and things, they are like house spirits. Hags, like I said, I've kind of haven't used orcs a lot lately. And one thing I want to use orcs is I want it to be like, there's not like, look at all these bad orc tribes. Oh God, what are we going to do? I want it more to be like, all the tribes are different. Some of them might be aggressive. Some of them are just like live and let live. And some of them are very, I want them to have like, I want the orcs to be more God fearing. I want the orcs who worship, I want to stay away from Groomsh. I can't remember the other like sub gods in the orcish pantheon. Luthik, I know, is one of them. I think Luthik's the mother. Let's take a look really quick. I kind of want to be like that. Groomsh is above reproach, so they don't like pray directly to Groomsh. So instead, they pray to like the gods that are set like just below Groomsh in his pantheon, which are, why don't you just tell me who the orcs are? There they are. So there's Luthik, which is the mother, which I've used a lot in other games. Bogtru, which is the fist of Groomsh, who's basically like, divine might through power. Ilinvel, who is the god of strategy and martial skill. So where Bogtru is like, I'm just going to punch you to death. Ilinvel is like, I've got a plan. Urtris, who's the lord of maggots, who's the god of orc god of death and disease. And Shargas, who's the night lord. He's the god of stealth and darkness, and his folks live in caves and train giant bats, and they wear masks, and they only attack at night. I definitely want to use him because I love the idea of there being like an offshoot a plan to punch you to death. Yes. Yeah, kind of like evil Batman a little bit because he's very much like we're gonna do horrible things together. But I like the idea too of bringing in like there's a demon that I haven't used in a while that a demon lord that I enjoy named Camazotz, who it's been used in Hellboy. It's an actual I think it's a biblical demon, who's basically a giant evil bat. No, I don't think it's biblical. I think it's actually it's either Incan or Aztec. Who is Cobalt Press in one of their big monster books did a version of him, which I absolutely love because it's like kind of got that South American flair to it. It's a giant like bipedal bat person, like kind of like Man Bat, except for he's glowing with green fire, and you're just like, okay, this is amazing. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that. I know I'm throwing a lot of ideas. So what I'm looking for, another thing I want to do, which just popped into my head yesterday. I saw a panel from an X-Men comic, from a recent X-Men comic, and it was a page of panels, and it was Hank Pym wandering through Hank McCoy wandering through like his facility, and he comes into a big chamber and there's the Watcher just standing there, and Beast is like, oh shit, what are you doing here? And he's like, I only observe and narrate, and you Hank McCoy, you disgust me. And Hank looks at him and he's like, I'm just doing it so I can fix everything. I'm just doing this so I can make it better. And the Watcher dissipates, and it's just Hank standing there half in the darkness, and he's like, I can fix this. I can make this better. Yeah. Right? And it's just left with that hanging.
Yeah, I mean, I stopped reading X-Force, but Beast has been a real piece of shit.
He's a straight up villain.
Yeah.
And the only way they're going to get out of that is Beast made a clone of himself, a seed of a clone. That's him during his Avengers run.
We'll see. I mean, there's so much weird crap going on right now. The post
Super Spike, because they've turned Hank Pym into Dark Beast, basically. From
essentially, he's just become the we need.
He's Mr. Sinister.
We need to do everything it takes to protect this thing that we have, and there is nothing too extreme to
What really bothers me about that is I've never seen Hank Pym as that character.
Yeah, it hasn't really jibed a ton for me. I'll be curious how they what happens and how much this affects him as a character long term. But
so not to get totally off topic. Well, no, you don't get X-Men branded Sentinels. We now have Iron Man branded Sentinels.
Yes, but that's because
Feng Lu or Feng Shui?
Fei something anyway.
So not to get off a huge tangent, I want to talk about quickly, hit a couple things.
Sure.
So Tony Stark is marrying Emma Frost and becoming Tony Frost.
I think it's a political ploy.
But I thought he just married Hellcat.
No, he proposed, but she turned him down.
Okay. Well, you were smart, Patsy. I hate this. I think it's terrible. I don't think it makes any sense. So there's the Red Wedding Hellfire Gala.
It caught me off guard. It surprised me.
It didn't for me because they just kept saying for the last 4 months this Hellfire Gala is going to be a thing.
Oh yeah, and I knew it was going to be a thing, but the way that it was a thing caught me off guard. But no, so there's a deal with if you're a human married to a mutant, you are allowed to.
So like Kingpin.
Yeah, Kingpin. North.
Which I do like that. I do like the fact that Kingpin is at the Hellfire Gala dressed as a Roman emperor crushing people's heads because he stands with Krakoa and his wife.
Yeah, so I think that's what they're doing with Tony here. But
the interesting thing I find with that is she's not the only one. Like she's trying to basically solidify human mutant relation, and it sounds like he's kind of lost everything
He
again
pretty much
for
has,
the
yeah.
10th fucking time.
Yeah.
So by taking that name, he drops the whole Stark stuff, which would associate him with, giant mutant killing sentinels and his company, which I think is back to selling munitions.
I mean, it usually is whenever he's not in charge of it, but he hasn't been in control of it for a while.
Well, this has happened, like I said, multiple times.
Oh yeah, it happens.
It's a trope of Iron Man
story
storytelling.
they keep doing, which bums me out because I mean it's not bad, but
And apparently, like somehow, some way, Orcus just makes Professor X completely an impotent twat, and like I don't get the whole Orcus thing.
They're basically anti-mutant Hydra / AIM.
It's so like one of the Sinister clones is involved in it because there's Maury McTaggart's involved in it. They're mutants.
Moira may not be anymore. The Sinister clone is not a mutant. There are mutants that work for Orcus, and they are the kind of mutants who see mutants as a threat. And I think there's also a little bit of that. Well, if I work with these guys, because Orcus is, I mean, they're saying like, we just want you to leave. Now they are actually killing mutants, but they do. I mean, they would if I think if the mutants just went away.
See, I think that would have been far. I was thinking about this. I think that would have been far more interesting. Yeah, if they just went to Mars. If they were like, you know what, fine.
Well, it was all part. I mean, that was their tactic, and so
we will just go to Mars, and then you can have a story about like Marvel 616 Earth being fucked because they lack a bunch of mutants.
I mean, they totally played Charles, and that was and he needed to kind of get taken down a peg. He's been
so you did see that now Cyclops has a broken back.
Yes.
His eyes have been sewn shut.
Yes.
He's been captured by Orcus.
Yep.
And he is known as Prisoner X.
Yes.
So we're going to get Cyclops as Charles Xavier going forward, is my guess.
Well, maybe. I mean, it wouldn't be the last time or first time.
No, but they're going all the way to like he can't walk. Also, the fact that Nimrod beat up Juggernaut makes like no sense to me. Nimrod is the most wildly scaled bad guy.
In context, it didn't bother me, but I'd have to reread it.
And he did it mainly off panel.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got Juggernaut there. You're making a big deal about Juggernaut being voted into the X-Men. And then you show up and kill basically all the X-Men. And then have Nimrod own Juggernaut off panel. I just don't get like how strangely disconnected they've made all of the X-Men stuff to the mainstream Marvel universe, as far as like they're not like best buddies with the Avengers, but some of them are very good friends with the Avengers. Some of the Avengers, my understanding, were at that gala.
Oh yeah, a bunch of the Avengers were.
So I don't understand how Orcus could have pulled this off. Because if most of the Avengers were there and all of the mutants were there, I'm sorry, they're going to get fucking killed.
Well, so what Orcus did was they, partway through the Hellfire Gala, they orchestrated an attack on Congress by somebody wearing the Captain Krakoa outfit. So the Avengers are like, oh shit, Captain Krakoa just like blew up the Senate.
Yeah. That I can get, yeah. Okay,
so
that makes more sense.
Go. And
I knew that they had the Captain Krakoa outfit now, and they were using someone to basically do bad shit. So they
it didn't. It was a little rough because that story. We saw that part of that story in the Free Comic Book Day one shot a few months ago.
Yeah.
And now we're getting the other side of it or whatever. So I think it didn't quite help with the flow, but yeah. So that's why the Avengers had to leave.
Okay. I also
And
never
then Orpheus
understood.
was like, "Yeah, guess what? We put all this together. Fuck you."
I've also never understood why the X-Men never reach out to people like the Hulk and aren't like, listen, Bruce, we kind of get you. We'll just give you an entire space where you can leave Hulk alone and do what the fuck you want to do. And all we ask is when shit goes down, you're basically our ace in the hole.
I mean, that'd be an interesting story. They are doing the first 2 issues of the current Hulk run has been
I heard it's a return to immortal Hulk form.
a little bit. It's
Maybe
playing
not in
off
tone and tenor, but like
it's playing off some of that stuff. It's very horror so far, because now that the green door is closed, shit's starting to come back.
so with I never understood when the green door closes. Does that mean no more just Banner can't or Hulk can't die?
I think that does. Yeah, that means that if a Hulk dies now,
they're dead.
They're dead.
Okay.
I mean, as much as that ever means anything in comics, and as hard as it is to kill a Hulk, but yes.
Okay.
I think you put that back in the box when he left.
So full circle to what I was getting to with the Watchmen.
Sure.
Sorry about the tangent. I got 2 more tangents I want to talk about here a little bit. I want a Watcher type. And so what I was thinking is in Chaos Scar, and since this is ostensibly taking place in the same world, there is a character, an NPC, a dead NPC that's kind of important, named Voran Earthmane. Voran Earthmane was a crazy powered wizard before the Chaos Scar, and he was a good guy. He was a Goliath, and he had this thing they're finding out, which I didn't even realize until I started reading all the adventures. He didn't have like one place he lived in the area of the Chaos Scar. He had all of these like singular buildings, like placed underground everywhere, and they're all connected by portals. So you could attack one place, you could attack his alchemy place, but he just closed the portal and you could never get to his library. So the one thing they're finding is like, oh shit, there's all these places. And one of the NPCs they were working with, which turned out to be a shitbag treasure hunter, this Dragonborn, that's all he wanted was like, I'm basically going to go around to all these places that Voran had, and I'm going to loot the shit out of them. And another thing that they still haven't really touched upon is one of their very first offered jobs was from a descendant of Voran Earthmane, who's just like, I just want what is my family's. I don't want to use it badly, but I'm trying to live up to my legacy. And they turned him down. So he's still just there. So anyway, I want Voran Earthmane to be, I don't know, either a ghost or I'm almost thinking like a lich. Because not all liches, not all liches. So which brings me to my second tangent. We watched the Dungeons and Dragons movie.
Okay.
Now I'm going to say this. I want it on record, chat. It was fucking great. It was awesome. I really liked it a lot.
I've heard good things.
Even the small stuff where I was like, does that really work in the context of D&D? Yeah, we got Thumberchild, who was fucking great. The only thing with that is I wish he would have talked at least a little bit, because he's not dumb. He's a dragon. He's smart. But I love the fact that he was just this huge chunky boy who at one time is just slides himself down a hill of skeletal parts, eating people as he slides his fat ass down the hill. Also, that the guy stabs him in the face, and you're like, oh, my wife was like, did they just kill him? And I was like, oh fuck no, that just was an annoyance. And then he shows right back up like, oh, I'm still here, bitch. Yeah, it was great. One thing I really liked is we got a lot of Red Wizards of Thay, and I'm not an enormous Forgotten Realms guy. I know some of the broad scope lore, but we got Zaz Tam. We got Zaz Tam as like not the main villain, but like the bad guy, basically the emperor to the character, the villain we're dealing with, one of the two villains we're dealing with in the movie, answering to Zastam. And it's such a great like scene because all you really see is an outline of a form in shadow with just two pinprick, just disturbingly glowing eye points. And the camera kind of moves just enough where you can see it's like this dissected husk of a person. Because you know they're a country ruled by necromancers, and the head of the country is Zastam, who is like a fucking lich above liches. And all he wants to do is it's like we need to kill more people so we can raise more dead for our army. Because I want to leave Thay. I don't want to leave Thay. I just want to conquer more land, and we need more troops to do that because, like, this is what we do, and all these other powers are aligned against us. So it's like it's one of those things where even though there's all these other enemies of each other out there, all these other factions, if Thay starts to expand, they'll all go, okay, never mind. Let's deal with Thay. This is the problem. So that was great. I loved all the name drops of like Elminster and Mordenkainen, and there was just lots of cool stuff with that. But I like the idea of Voran being like this watcher type, almost like storyteller, because it's one thing that they keep finding in all these Voran places are like Voran wrote a ton of books. He wrote a ton of books about like what the world was like before the Chaos Scar. He was like I turned him more into like almost like a magical ecologist. And he wrote all these books where it was like no one was ever going to read them, but it was just he wanted to have all of his stuff written down. So I like this idea that as the world's about to end, he just in a last-ditch effort turns himself into a lich.
Oh.
And then it takes him a while to, recorporate his body.
Yeah.
Because he's going to hide his phylactery not on this plane. But now he's like found himself in this other area, and he's kind of decided to just be this impartial, step away chronicler, more or less. Because again, going back to Wildermyth, one thing I really, really, really like about that game is that a lot of the game is built around like, this is all stories in a book. There were stories before your characters, and there will be stories after your character. You basically even say at one point, we're simply writing our chapter in the book of the world. And that game also has time jumps. Like every time you finish a chapter in the adventure, time moves forward like 10 years.
Oh.
So your characters get like one of my games, we like the son of two characters is now a part of the party.
Nice.
Rubber sill. Rubbery sill? I don't know how to say that. No, thank you. You bot. So I like that kind of idea. So before we move on, let me get to my other tangent. My last like planned tangent. I watched Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
I haven't checked it out yet. Now that it is on Disney Plus, I'll watch it at some point here.
In the room of four of us, we universally all like the D&D movie better, which kind of surprised me. But I kind of figured out the reason why in my conversation with everyone afterwards. James Gunn either decided to fall into a particular pattern with these movies, or Marvel was like, hey, this is what works. Don't stray from the formula. And he practices a very specific type of emotional manipulation in these movies. And he does so in a very perfect way of like hitting you with music,
Yeah.
slow-mo Spielberg-esque shots of people looking distressed and concerned, and high tension heartbreak. And it's just a repetitive side. Also, like throwing in a joke like every 15 minutes. There has to be something funny.
Yeah, and that's very much the Marvel movie.
It just felt like I was like large abstract threat like Ego or like Ronin.
Yep.
You know, this thing that even if you beat the bad guy, it doesn't really go away. It wasn't bad, and this is the thing.
That's the Marvel movies. Sadly, I mean they do a lot of that.
It was the thing like walking away from it, going. Also, I will say this about the D&D movie. I don't know if I've ever seen Hugh Grant play a villain before, but he plays the best smarmiest shit fuck villain I've seen in a long time. What a shitbag. But also a villain who thinks he's doing the right thing because he's very much a neutral evil character. Well, it's not really evil because I'm doing it for myself, and now I'm doing it for this other person with me because I want this other person to admire me. I want them to realize like I'm like a parent to them. And you know what a parent really is? A parent's like a god. So I'm like a god to this person. Which, if I'm God, it means I have to do this right by this person. It's just so shitty. And like his logic, like as he explains it, you're like, what a fuck bag. He's like Doom with no morals, which makes him a very, very interesting villain.
Yeah.
And I'm not spoiling. I think everyone kind of knew he was one of the main bad guys. Although it's not played like that at the very beginning, which is interesting. Anyway, Guardians was good. I enjoyed it, although I was kind of like, this isn't the High Evolutionary that from the comics at all. Like, this is a yelly guy. I don't think I've ever remembered the High Evolutionary yelling in any panels. No, all caps. He's like a very detached guy.
Yeah.
And I don't think he was the guy responsible for all those experiments before we got Rocket, but whatever. Now, the guy who played him, and I can never pronounce his name correctly, so I'm not going to even try, who was also in Peacemaker, was fucking awesome. Yeah, God, he was good. He like owns every scene he's in. And I also say, as we were finishing the movie, my wife looked at me and said, I'm very sad that this is the last movie we're going to get Dave Bautista as Drax. Because he has some scenes in this movie where it's very close to producing tears, everybody in the room. And it's nothing like he says, it's just his face. It's a question. A couple times he questions some things and his facial expressions to the answers he gets. The one thing I will say about this movie above the other two, a lot of the underlying relationship issues between the prime characters and what they think about each other kind of comes to a head. And it's kind of like, you're like, this is a perfect like version of a Marvel super team where it's like, you're not friends. You're like, you're people who come together in the face of a threat, but you're also people who come together in the face of a threat who end up caring about one another. Like, it's very odd that way. Whereas like I there was recently a panel in the Titans comic that I thought explained it perfectly, where I think it's like Dick Grayson and Wally West are talking to one of the Leaguers, and something said about the Leaguer is talking about how like the Titans are really going to have to step up since they're basically going to be the premier team. And Wally kind of laughs and he says, I don't get why you think that's funny. He says, I've been in both teams. The League is not a family.
Yeah. The
League is a bunch of people who work together, who somewhat respect one another.
Sometimes.
But also we are brought together a lot of times because we're worried about what could potentially happen with the guy to my left or my right.
Yeah.
We're almost at constant checks and balances of one another. and the person's like, kind of like looks confused for a second, but then kind of goes, okay, you know, and he says, but the Titans, we grew up together. We are literally a family. Like, we've known each other since we were teenagers. We literally, you know, have gone through everything together.
Yeah.
Bad, you know, bad and good, betrayals, deaths, everything else. We are a family. I will always be a Titan. I can be in and out of the league, but regardless, I will always be a Titan. And I was like, fuck, that's very cool. You know, it's a very interesting way to look at it. It's like, you know, it was kind of someone I was reading an article was talking about how it's kind of the Doom Patrol and the Titans have very similar dynamics that way, except for the Doom Patrol are all bonded by trauma.
Yes.
But they are a family. They're like the Fantastic Four. They're so like ingrained in one another's life as a support system that even when shit falls apart, you're still in the family. But how, you know, like teams like the Avengers and even the X-Men, not so much.
No.
But what I got out of the Guardians of the Galaxy movie was that group of Guardians, it's kind of like that. It's kind of like this weird, like, you know, it's your shitty uncle at Thanksgiving. And you're like, you're a dipshit, but you're like, I love you because I kind of have to. Like, I can call you a shitty fuckhead, but if someone else does,
yeah,
they're in trouble.
Yeah.
So yeah, I that's something I really like. I was like, God, that's really well done, because I don't get that feeling from the Avengers in the movie, and sometimes in the comics I do, but in the movies, fuck no.
Well, that depends on the you know, the team in the comics.
Yeah. Oh, it definitely does.
It varies. It varies a bunch. Sometimes it is more just like, well, yeah, I'm gonna make a team of my friends or whatever. And other times it's like, well, we're just gonna make a team that can do the job.
Yeah. You know, a crisis response team.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, I just wanted my opinion out there on the Guardians. Is good. It's not great. It's good. James Gunn is a master of emotional manipulation. I think he did some of that in Suicide Squad as well. But definitely in the Guardians movie. And I think if you're paying close attention in Guardians 3, you're like, oh yes, you've done this trick before. You've done it a lot. And now I'm like, I see it and I appreciate it, but it's not going to really hit me the same way. And whereas D&D movie was fucking great. It was just super fun the whole time. Also, to allay anyone's fears who hasn't seen it, because this was a fear my wife had, she was like, I really hope we don't get like one owlbear scene that they showed in the preview, and then that's all we're going to get of the owlbear stuff. I also was like, so can a druid transform into an owlbear? And I'm like, under current rules, no. And I don't know who told them that was okay. I'm just going to assume they have an item. The wild-shaped druid cannot turn into an owlbear. Although there is a very amazing scene where the wild-shaped druid changes into about 10 things in the span of about 3 minutes, which is fucking great in a chase scene. Which I was also like, I don't think they can do that either. So we were all just like, you know what? This is cool. A rule of cool.
Yeah.
If this was at a table, I would just be like, someone's got a magic item. But to allay your fears, the same fears my wife had, the owlbear represents. Like, and you can definitely see in the final fight, there's some definite Avengers 1 DNA in the final fight that is done in a very, very good way. Or even Cap and Bucky's fight with Iron Man in Civil War. There's some same DNA in that, and in the final fight in D&D as there is in that movie. Anyway, 2 movie reviews for the price of nothing. So kind of one thing I want to do is I'm thinking I might want to boil in some time jumps. So for my 0 session though, and I want everyone's opinion on this, because I want this to be a troop game, just like Chaos Scar, so people can jump in and out. That people live like in one of these 7 communities. And I want one thing to get across is that like I was trying to figure out like a way to do it in like a nursery rhyme format. is roads aren't safe
Oh.
because there's so many holes to the Shadowfell and the Feywild. You can just wander into it and never get out.
Ah.
But that's why everyone boats, because all these tributaries meet to this inland sea, so everyone just moves because it's safer. But also the water's not completely safe because there's bad stuff in the water beyond that. There's merfolk.
Ethel Merman?
Now, there's also bad, unpredictable weather, so you can't always travel by water. So sometimes you're forced over land. Like, have you ever seen, oh God, what's the name of the movie now? It's a Russian science fiction movie. It's not Solaris. It's, I rave about it all the time. It's based on the book called Roadside Picnic.
I remember you talking about it, but I can't remember what it's called.
Oh, God damn it. The movie is called Stalker.
Oh, yeah.
So in Stalker, one of the things is, like, because this area is just saturated with alien energy, you can't just wander around in it, because you could just step into a thing and be time displaced. So, like, one thing that's constantly happening is he's, like, taking, like, organic material and he's wrapping, like, fishing line around it and throwing it to make sure they can walk that way.
Ah.
I like that kind of idea, that to be a ranger in this type of thing is, like, less about, like, oh, I know about animals in the woods. It's more like, I know how to most likely get us through without dying or disappearing or being, like, one of the things that popped in my head is, like, Rumpelstiltskinning.
Yeah.
Or the end of Army of Darkness. You wander in the Feywild, you breathe the air of these flowers, and you wake up and it's been 500 years and you've got a beard that's like 8 feet long, and you're like, what happened? I want to, like, steal a lot from, like, fairy tale like that.
I don't want to say anything about it. Beyond that, I need to get it to you. The latest issue of Fantastic Four deals with some time displacement stuff, and it's like a Fantastic Four kind of horror story.
I read about this issue. It sounds amazing.
It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah, someone said it's maybe the best illustration of the Fantastic Four as horror characters, eclipsing Planetary.
Yeah.
They said it might be the pinnacle of Fantastic Four's horror.
It's really, really good.
So what I'm thinking about is my session 0 will be characters in this place right as the events happen.
Okay.
So they die. Your characters in session 0 die. There's an old adventure, or 4th edition adventure, that I very, 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 very much love. It's called something at Gardmore Abbey.
Okay,
it's a box set.
What if the first character to die doesn't die and just gets blasted into some future
That might happen.
But the rest die.
That might very well happen. That's a great idea. Or just is asleep for this whole time. Or becomes a revenant or something like that, because revenants don't die. They're undead. They're not dead until they finish what upset them in life. So there's an adventure, something at Ardmore Abbey in 4th edition, and the whole thing is, like, you play at the beginning, and all the characters die because you're the story that your current characters are reading before they go. I think it's called maybe The Fall of Ardmore or Gardmore Abbey, which the whole thing is, like, you're trying to fight off this invading force, and there's no way. You will die. And I believe your characters end up becoming ghosts.
Oh.
And, like, I've done it. I did it at Extra Life. There was a Ravenloft adventure too, where you all die at the very beginning, and then you play undead. I did that, like, in the first or second Extra Life, where all the players walk through a door literally the first 5 minutes of the game and all die, and they all wake up digging themselves out of their graves, and they're all different undead. And they were like, "Oh God, that was wild." Which was kind of also I riffed off that last year when I did that. You're all parts of the same Frankenstein monster, made up of your body parts.
Yeah.
Um, so I what do you guys think about a? Because I don't want them all to live. That's kind of the key. Is like
Yeah.
it should have like this was. You were there at the cataclysm. You were there when shit happened. You saw the world end. So and then it's like we jump all the way to session 1 where it's like, and what I want to do is I want to have a session in between there where whoever wants to is involved in like, let's build what happened to the world. Let's build like I said, I've got a loose skeleton, but let's put muscles and flesh and everything on that skeleton. What do the fingers actually look like? Like one of my thoughts was like the dwarves go underground. What if those dwarves end up like going so far and so much shit happening that they basically become the Drugar? So the dwarves you knew, the clans you knew who went underground, they're gone. They're something else now. And you can deal with them, but the Drugar are also not the best. You know, they're technically lawful evil. Now they've stopped slaving because now they just build automatons because automatons don't die on them. It's not like out of the goodness of their heart. It's just because it's like
it's just this is efficiency.
Yeah, I don't have to. You know, it's. I always look at the Drugar as dwarves with no joy. They build utilitarian things with no beauty. That's their curse. Is when their leader, because they've got a cool creation story. They dig too deep out of greed, and when they try to get back with the other clans, the clans have fled, so they're lost in the Underdark, and their leader makes a deal with one of the Dukes of Hell. But he outbargains this Duke. So while the Drugar lose, but they also win. But the thing they lose is all their ability to like enjoy the aesthetic of what they were making. They're never satisfied. And I also would refer to them as very Soviet Union dwarves. Everything is utilitarian. There's no like they're joyless. But they're not like maniacal mustache twirling villains either. They're just like that's where Thumberchod comes in. He's actually lives with the Drugar because they basically keep him to keep their eternal forges lit, and they feed him as their way to. They basically have given him unfettered access to their wealth and food and everything else. And because the Drugar were affected by the Illithids, they have psionic abilities. Like the Drugar have an ability to enlarge themselves. So they go from dwarf size to bigger than a person. They also have like certain other psionic abilities. So they have a enclave of psionic Drugar whose entire job is to mentally placate Thumberchod. Because they're worried that if he ever figures out like what's going on, he's just going to blow his way out of their city and just decimate it, and they'll lose their forges. So I love the fact that they're kind of underhanded. See, I don't even want to, Brian. It's not even session 0 to 10. Oh, you know what? That's interesting though. 10 to 15th level. I never thought about that. Yes, that's kind of where I want to go. That's a really good way of looking at it. I apologize. I didn't read that correctly. I'm going to actually write that down in its entirety.
Yeah, you start with some powerful stuff, and then it's like, oh yeah, it didn't matter.
Everyone likes to play a session of like super high level. And there's a history of like failing to stop cataclysms in D&D. And 5. They might use like the quiet year or something like that to do it, to make it more organized in its creation. I do want it to be like these communities like aren't under consistent siege or anything. They're just like they're spread out. They trade with one another. Like gold is not really a thing. Like the primary currency is copper because it's far more prevalent. Like if someone has a bunch of gold, it's like, yeah, you're really rich, but no one wants that. You know, copper and trade. So the other thing I'm doing is I am taking the crafting system from a game called Iron Halberd, which is another like OSR game. Which has a relatively like it has like a 7 to 8 page crafting system.
Yeah.
And I am bolting that on to Cairn. Because I'm not done doing it, but they have a durability and repair rules for your armor. And I wanted crafting to be a part of it because I wanted people to feel like they have jobs. They're not just, I just adventure. It's like, no, you have a job. Like you need to do other things. So people can take like downtime turns to do things like craft, you know, to cook, to forage, you know, to hire followers, to shop, because I don't mind shopping shopping sessions, but I also get real bored of them. But like the crafting is like you have to find ingredients, you know, and when you craft, there's a chance you fail and you just use up ingredients.
Oh.
So then it's like, oh shit, now I have to go out and refine some of this stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like reagents, creature parts, or, you know, this is for your weapons, your armor. There's Iron Halberd uses scrolls, but Cairn uses spell books. And a spell book contains one spell. That's it. Anyone can cast a spell as long as they have the book for it. But once you do it, the book's expended.
Right.
Also, if you got to cast, you have to use both hands. So you can't like, I'm fighting and I pull out my book. It's like, no, you need to pull out your book, take the amount of time to cast the spell. Also in Cairn, your backpack is what you can carry. So books take up space. So if someone's going to carry like 4 books,
that's it. Yeah.
They're not carrying a bunch else. Somebody else in the group. So that's why like hiring people becomes a thing. Like I hired this porter to carry my shit. And I'm going to port over the rule for Shadow Dark for torches because we used that in the last episode of Chaos Scar and everybody loved it.
It's a really solid, simple, straightforward.
It made everybody like, are there torches in this room? Are there a place to light something in this room? Became a thing because even the people with like who had low light vision, not everybody in the party does. I was like, so if you just care about you, which is your prerogative, what happens when you're barbarian, your fighter in the group can't see and just starts swinging? They're like, oh, he could hit us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, then we need to make sure torches are lit. Yep, probably a good idea. Which thing, Brian? Be more specific because I talk way too fast. So I'll bring potions, and then there's other, you know, crafting things that I'll be putting in. So it'll be a couple page document on just crafting because I still have to put in like, I'm not doing artifacts because I want like the special items you find to be special. Because I don't like when it's like, I have this special item. Like, Minecraft's a good point of view. Like when I make a sweet item in Minecraft and then it breaks, and then I'm just like, well, this is bullshit. Why the fuck did I waste all these resources on this diamond pickaxe that's got unbreaking on it when now it's fucking broken unless I want to go find diamonds to fix it, which is what the crafting system is. But there's things like there's pickaxes if you don't have mending or unbreaking, they're gonna break and then you're fucked. The lighting. Yeah, lighting I think is really important, and I'm not the best at it. So it's something I want to improve upon. So this is as much a challenge for, you know, me putting players in new positions as well as like me trying to make myself do new things. Um, there was something else on my list. Time jumps.
Yes.
So I'm not sure I want to do this, but I know we've talked about it before because we wanted to use it for Kirby World, because it comes straight out of the second edition um, setting. Birthright. It's like you in Birthright, you go adventuring once a year because you're like the higher ups in a kingdom.
Mm.
You're like the king and the bishop, and you can't be like, hey man, I don't really want to run the kingdom. I want to go fight like after I fight this army, I want to go kill this legendary monster, and then after that's done, I kind of go treasure hunt. It's like
Yeah.
no, you
No.
get to do one a year because the rest of your year is spent doing like shit to keep your kingdom running.
Yeah, it's the King Conan thing.
Yeah, but I don't want to do that. But I want to like I said with Wildermyth, they do this thing where it's like you do a chapter, and then there's a time jump.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking what I want to do is like keep my chapters into maximum 10 episode arcs. And then once that ends, then there's a time jump. Probably like no more than 5 years. Where I let the player, it's like in Wildermyth, it says, and then there were 10 years of peace.
Ah.
So your characters get older. And one thing you want to do is you want to do certain things as you go along because it increases your age of retirement. So like I had one really powerful character, but his retirement age was like 40.
Oh.
And I had like a wizard whose retirement age was like 75. So it was like these characters will not stay in the same party forever.
Right.
If the fighter doesn't die, he'll retire. I like that idea of also at the beginning when someone makes a character saying, set your retirement age.
Yeah.
When is your character going to be physically done? And then, and there's a thing in Cairn. Do I have Cairn open? I do. Where you take injuries that will, not now, which lead to some changes, and usually they're pretty positive. There, scars.
Mm.
When you hit 0, you see how many points below 0 you were, and you get these scars. And a lot of times they're helpful until you get to like Sundered and Mortal Wound and Doomed.
Yeah.
Although Doom's cool, death seemed ever so close, but somehow you survived. If your next save against critical damage is a fail, you die horribly. If you pass, roll 3d6. If the total is higher than your maximum HP, you take a new result.
Oh.
I want to add like if you're hamstrung, you lose a year off of your retirement age.
Yeah.
Like you're getting like life is kicking you in the balls. Like you so I think that also I think incentivizes people to be like, what is my character going to do? When they are they going to retire? Because I've played games where I've been like, no, my character's retired. He's done. His story's over. I'll make a new character, but this character is now, hey, D&DDT, Chef.
Yeah.
Chef got to a point where Chef was like, man, I really don't want to die.
Right.
I'm going to open all these, barbecue restaurants with my smoky method, and I'm going to just like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur now. That's what I'm doing. That's my story. And then we could go back and visit Chef and all these things, but like I basically told Beard, Chef will never adventure again. Chef's done. So what do you guys think about that? Does that work? Does that make sense? Does that sound fun?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. I think it'll be, I mean, you'll have to kind of decide how often you want to do them. But I like the idea a lot.
I thank you, Brian. I do think it sounds like because it's like this will be less of a like high fantasy game. I want it to be
Yeah.
like a folk fantasy game. I like the idea of a character being like, and this is another thing I was thinking about, because it was mentioned and something I read by the writers of the D&D movie that I loved is they were like, people were saying, "Oh, why'd you set it in the Forgotten Realms? It's full of like all these crazy powerful NPCs. Why wouldn't they just handle this?" And there's an actual spoilers. If you don't want this, don't listen. There's an actual very powerful NPC in the movie, and he goes on a short part of the movie with them, and then he leaves, and he tells them like, "I've got other shit to do." Like I can't hold. They basically say like, "Hey, you're way tougher than us. You're way better at this. Why don't you just come with us and stop this?" He's like, "Because I'm just helping you right now. I've got my own stuff to do. Like this is me on a side quest with you. This is not you on a side quest with me." I also love the fact that I read that character was originally supposed to be Driss Deruden, and for whatever reason, it didn't work out. And if you look at the setting and especially the visual dynamics of the bad guys, you can tell they were supposed to be Drow. There's a lot of spider motif going on, and I adore the way they covered that up. That is such a good job. And the NPC is a character who I'm like, if they do another movie and if they feel like they have to do it in the Forgotten Realms, do it with that character because that character was fucking great. And he was great because he was very much like, I'm more powerful than all of you. I'm doing much cooler shit than all of you. But it wasn't like you're my underlings. It was more like a kind of like he was the Obi-Wan type of thing. Where he was like kind of like parsing out like mystic bullshit knowledge to a couple of the characters, which they found annoying, but also were like, initially a couple of the characters were like, that guy is a fucking douchebag. But by the end, they're like, well, maybe that character wasn't as big a douchebag as we thought. Maybe they were just right. But they explained it in a way that felt like douchebaggery. I loved that because it also felt like a fucking D&D campaign. The whole thing felt like there's times where they do some dumb shit in that movie, and in my head as a DM going, this is like 80% of the games I've run where the players have been like, we're gonna do this plan that sounds completely like it should work, and it's missing every key component of information I've given them, and it fucking backfires. And then they do a couple things in the movie where like, that's crazy, that should not work. But I think about running the game and go, fuck, that's exactly what I would want my players to do. I would want them to think outside the box and do something that seems so crazy, but at the same time makes so much sense for their players and as well as so interesting, like that I would rule of cool the fuck out of it, where I would be like, I'm going to give you every opportunity to let the dice rolls make sure this succeeds, because this, from a storytelling perspective, is amazing. So yeah, anyway. So I'm gonna again reach out to all of you because I don't want to drag on too long today, because I'm sure Matt's got stuff going on. I'm sure the rest of you do as well. Other ideas or thoughts or things you'd like to see where you're like, this would be cool, this doesn't happen enough in games?
I think, I mean, if you're messing with the time jumps too, I think it could be fun to do like stuff with how like history kind of changes how people are perceived. Like, here's this long stretch of our history where, the founding fathers are these revered figures, and then now it's like, oh no, they were just people, and they were kind of pieces of shit in a lot of ways. But it could be interesting for players to have it be like, yeah, here's this here, like you do a time jump or whatever, and all of a sudden this character that was like this big bad guy is now like, you know, in charge of something really important and actually kind of good at their job, or maybe they're gone, but people view them, in a totally different light now. Play with some of that stuff could be fun.
I like the idea of not doing a lot of mustache twirling villainy.
Right. Right.
A lot of like more neutral evil and neutral good as kind of those things.
Well, or like I'm doing this thing, you don't agree with how I'm doing it, but maybe it's going to turn out, or you don't understand why I'm doing it.
Also, we need a good name for the cataclysm that occurs where this thing from space falls.
Yeah. So what's like the exact, like what happens?
An unknown body falls from the sky. It's basically like a classic "what killed the dinosaurs" thing happens on this
Okay.
continent. Um, it could be a god. It could be just shit. It could be a spaceship. It could be anything. I've not decided what exactly is this object that falls that is the Chaos Scar. But it decimates civilization in this area. It sets it back 1,000 years minimal. Sundering isn't bad. I feel like Sundering, Cataclysm, things like that, they get used so much.
They do.
I was hoping that there would be a different word that would kind of hit those same points.
Let's see here. Hmm.
We all got real quiet.
Yeah, I'm just looking up stuff here.
Wasn't there a period of during like the Permian or Triassic thing called the Great Dying?
Yeah.
Like when it was like the world's largest mass extinction. I think it's called like the Great Dying, which is just a fucking metal name.
Yeah, that is
Just,
the term.
like if you were gonna name a metal band now, like a black metal, name it the Great Dying. Um, uh,
Let's see. Hmm. The conflagration?
Conflagration?
Yeah, I don't
The
know.
Great Conflagration? What's about just calling it the Fall?
Yeah, that could work. I mean, very straightforward.
Yeah, that's the thing. I was looking for something a little more poetic, I guess.
Yeah.
Also, one thing I wanted to use here is just basic undead. If the barrier between the Shadowfell is thin, then the chance of just like wandering undead is far more apt. So when people die, like it should be a bigger deal. Like we have to do all these things to make sure they don't come back.
Hmm.
Because what we found is people get up, the restless dead occur more often because the barriers between the worlds are way too thin. It also gives me an excuse to use my reoccurring NPC pseudo villain. I've used it every campaign so far since I started doing streaming games. Calorel the Vile, who's actually from a D&D adventure, who Mike Shea would not stop fucking talking about, and neither would Matthew Colville. He's from a 4th edition adventure called Keep on the Shadowfell, and he's kind of a throwaway villain. And they both were like, I use this character all the time because he's a good way to have a lawful evil character who's higher level than the PCs show up early and give them something to be kind of wary of, but also recognizing your place in the world, while also looking at like, I kind of want to fuck that guy up eventually. But also like giving them an offer at the very beginning of their time saying, hey, I don't want you to willy-nilly kill stuff, but if you kill stuff, I would like the bodies. Oh, what am I doing with the bodies? Don't worry about it. He's been a big part of Down Outlands. He's been mentioned in Chaos Scar. I actually think they met him very briefly, and I've made them a very androgynous figure. That when they're wearing all their armaments and things, their vestments, they look like this, massive, like almost Reaper-esque figure wearing armor made of bones, being pulled on a chariot that tears through the Shadowfell into other worlds, drawn by two giant undead goats. That then he fills his cart with the bodies of the dead and drags them back into the Shadowfell. But when they take their vestments off, they're a very like androgynous, very almost angelic figure. They're known as the scion of Orcus, and Orcus is the demon prince of undeath. So what is So Orcus is a big cosmic baddie. So what is this person doing? I love that idea. There's just this NPC floating around that everyone kind of has interactions with at different times and has not been overtly evil. The Down Outland kids have had a reasonably good relationship with this character for the most part. To the point when they thought that when Akko died, because Akko made a huge overt like, hey, Kellerel, maybe you just need friends. Maybe you're just lonely. Are you around anything living where you're at? And he's not, or they're not. So they basically kind of like said, well, we'll be, because they're kids, they look at it kid logic, we will be your friend. And Kellerel was like, Okay. So when that character dies, Kell-El loses his shit and is very upset, and he wants to bring them back. And luckily or unluckily, depending on how you look at it, Akko had separated himself from his Echo, named Echo, and became a completely separate being. And instead, Echo went with Kell-El. So Kell-El got his own Akko.
Oh, nice. What about the Cascade?
Ooh, I like the Cascade. It's different. Very different. The Cascade will be the placeholder. If we find something better, we'll take the Starship Troopers approach. You're in charge until you die or somebody better comes along.
Yeah.
Other ideas or things we kind of want to float out there. Like I said, I don't want to eat up your entire Sunday morning.
Let's see here.
Also, I'd like to change the Great Leaving, but I don't know what else to call it, which is the elves going back to the Feywild. Oh, the thinning. Ooh.
Yeah, that's good.
I think the thinning is that's got such an evocative, like, Vales get thinned because of it, but also the populace gets absolutely decimated.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see here.
All right. Again, Brian, well done. That's a good one.
Yeah, that is.
I've never read the Witcher stuff, but I kind of like some of that vibe. I think it's a little more dark fantasy than I want to go, but that there are like hags and witches and all that stuff. I want to play off, witches as well, like as a not just hags, but just like that. Being a witch is not a bad thing in this world. It's like you're a medicine woman. I mean, there's bad witches out there, but there also is like a lot of it is just like you're a hedge wizard, Harry. You're a wizard, Gary. I think that would be important because arcane magic, I think, is probably like real arcane magic is very, very limited. I mean, like I said, anybody can cast spells. You're casting from a book. You don't like, there's not wizards per se. I believe Karen doesn't even have wizards.
Well, yeah, I have to carry all those books around.
Let's go back and see. I think in Karen, you're not like, there isn't like a, I don't think there's class. It's classless. Yeah. You don't have classes. I don't think there's races either. I think it's like literally it's kind of like what we do with Star Wars with Powered by the Apocalypse. You can say like, oh, I'm a Gamorrean, but it's like, oh, that's great. Well, you don't get anything for being Gamorrean.
Right. Um, the turning instead of the great.
Ooh, the turning. I like the evocative nature of it, but I wonder if there's a different word, like another synonym for turning that might.
Yeah.
So what I want to use Karen, I want to point out too, is because it's a far more narrative game than D&D is, and I want this to be far more story driven than combat heavy, because that's like combat heavy. My combat heavy game is Chaos Scar. Let's be honest.
Mhm.
It's the let's go on adventure game, except for I've had players who are now far more, Brian being one of them, who's also like, I don't just want to go on adventure. I want to have stories, and I want to have relationships. And I'm not blaming you on this, Brian, to blame this on you, but it made me go, well, what if this game was far more that? Yeah, there's like not racist. So you could say like, hey, I'm Tabaxi. I'd be like, okay, you're Tabaxi. Um, Also, man, Karen is so fucking easy to pick up. It's so simple. Stat blocks are so dumb. Like, look at these as far as like dumbly simple compared to D&D. Like, look at these spells too. Oh, multi-arm, just get an extra arm. I don't have to read like a paragraph and figure out duration and everything. There's your character sheet. There's your backpack.
Oh, how about just the fork?
Ooh, ooh, that's ooh. The rupture? No, God, that sounds like I just had a terrible hemorrhoid.
The divergence,
The
the
hue,
divide.
because I want to use something that sounds old but also has a little bit of that backwoods feel to it.
Sure.
That's why the hue felt like. We'll have to think on it. I like that though.
Yeah.
Um, but one thing it could be though is like it could be like in books, it's called the finning, but like colloquially known as the fork.
Okay. Yeah, that
This
could
was
work.
the fork in the road. The elves went one way, the dwarves went one way, and the rest of us were left with this.
Yeah, let's see here.
Also, I kind of want to do like a collectivism orcish tribe, like communist orcs. Very like Lenin, Stalin-esque orcs in some cases, where they're like
Yeah.
everything is for the greater good of the tribe.
Hmm. The event could be the culmination, and then the tribes leaving could be the thinning. Like it's the culmination of the world that came before.
Ooh, I like that. That's that would be the thinning. That's great. So we still need to figure out a name for the big event, but I like the thinning as like it makes so much sense on so many levels from like wordplay. To me anyway.
Yeah. Because also like the salvation part of it, it would add to that too. Yeah.
You know, this group, and we need to figure out like what that would be. I mean, I use a lot of eldritch horror, so part of me wants to steer clear of that. But then I think about movies like The Ritual, where you know you have this. I don't know if you've seen it or not, but you like have these people living out in Norway and they're worshiping this thing, and they're sacrificing people who basically fall into their myths. So the crops come back. So the crops, you know, actually are fertile, which you know also very Wicker Man-esque. You know, it's in this case these things live underwater. Could be that like just a super powerful aboleth that maybe it was inside some of this meteor.
The consequence depends on how they view it, I guess.
Yeah. I kind of want to stay away from that because that's a big part of like what Dragonlance, where the cataclysm happens and the church is like, oh, this is a consequence. The gods have turned away from us. Like I like the idea that the gods aren't really worshipped anymore. They're like, oh, these are the gods. Okay. They don't like curse the gods, but they're also like, the gods don't affect my day-to-day life. These spirits, these house spirits and nature spirits, they do.
The crux, great crux, I don't know, because if the elves saw it coming, I could see, oh, this is a big like turning point for.
All right, we've been going hard for an hour and a half. I think we're going to call it here for now.
All right.
We can come back to this, you know, as we're going along. I don't think I'm anywhere near ready just yet to.
You're getting there, but yeah.
But I feel like we got a lot. We were able to get a lot, like, kind of fleshed out. And like I said, I don't want to over flesh it out because I do want.
You want the players, yeah.
And I also want to utilize. So I think I may have sent this out to people. I may have even mentioned on here before. Someone did a bunch of videos, and one of the videos they did was like, here's some strategies that really good DMs use, like famous DMs use. And one of them is by Abria Eingard, where she will do the meanwhile. Basically, this is going on. Your characters don't know this, but you know this. Where she'll like basically it's like a cutaway scene to the bad guy doing something that you as like an impartial viewer know about, but your players don't, which gives like so much more breadth and scope and large scale consequence. And I kind of want to use some of that. I think it's really cool. Like it's used in, you know, books and comic books and movies and all this other. I mean, it's even used in board games, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know if it. I think it would kill the immersion for like in a game like Down Outlands or Chaos Scar, but I think if it's built in from the very, ground up in Cairn,
Yeah, you could probably.
yeah, I feel like it would make sense, maybe. I don't know. Something to contemplate. Anyway, Matthew, where can people find your beautiful visage?
Here most Sundays, over on the Dave Wonder channel on most Tuesdays. And yeah, that's it. I'm on Blue Sky now. I got a code for that, so I'm checking that out.
I have no idea what that is because I'm an old man.
It's a Twitter replacement sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. But yeah, so that's me.
I will be. I think I might stream some Zomboid here pretty quick. I don't know.
You are in a Zomboid mode.
I am a Zomboid boy. And I don't think my wife is awake yet because she was real tired. But I was going to say I will be back on Thursday. It's another episode of the Spoopy Boys.
Whoa.
In this month, we're doing and talking about 5 folk horror movies, and the movies that our illustrious host Colonel Creepy Colin has chosen are the 1992 Candyman, which is an interesting folk horror because it's urban folk horror. The 1973 Wicker Man, although we're going to talk about Nicolas Cage punching women out while inside a bear suit.
Sure, you got it.
Pumpkinhead, which I don't have the year that was made, but some of the best practical effects in a horror movie ever by the great Stan Winston. The Vitch. Who doesn't love The Vitch? It's very good. Don't you want to live deliciously? Black Phillip. Rawhead Rex. I like the Clive Barker story. The movie is fucking wild. And it's one of the worst looking monsters. Midsommar, which I'm about to out myself here. I have not watched an Ari Aster movie.
Oh, really?
Yep. Very, very. I've only seen Jordan Peele's Us and what's the first one he did? Jordan Peele's first horror movie? I can't remember what it's called now.
Yeah, I don't either.
I haven't like sit down and watch them. I've seen bits and pieces of them. I know they're good. It's one of those things a lot like Ari Aster's movies where I just am like, I'm going to have to pay attention to this. And I don't really have
You're
it.
not necessarily, yeah, there's plenty of times where it's like, I want to watch this movie, but I know I need to
Get out. Yes. Thank you, Brian. I need to, and I'm going to have to watch Midsommar before Thursday. So, and Witchfinder General. And Witchfinder General, which I think is one of the best Vincent Price performances because it is one of the nastiest movies from that period of time. And Vincent Price is not playing his normal kind of smarmy, fun, almost campy self. He is playing a real person who was absolutely fucking deplorable, and he plays it to the hilt. And I don't mean like in a campy way. I mean, he is the worst in that movie. That movie's hard to watch at times. It's very good. It is a movie with an absolute mean spirit, but it's good. So those are their flicks we're going to talk about on Thursday. I invite folks to, if you haven't seen any of them, take a chance to watch them. I think a bunch of them are on Tubi. Some of them are on Shudder. It should be pretty easy to find. And then join in the conversation on Thursday. Friday, we'll be bad at games. If I can get people interested in making decisions, we'll play some Wildermyth, where you guys can all just come on and tell us what we're going to do in our story. Otherwise, we might go back to, if we don't do it today, we might go back to Zomboid, which I'm pretty sure I'm going to play some Zomboid here in a minute. Just not a regular PZ Zomboid. We might go back to Sean Mayer and the fishing in the farmer house that I'm now doing right now because I'm kind of obsessed with figuring this out. And then not this Monday, but the next Monday, probably Down Outlands penultimate season 1 episode. It's gonna get put off a bunch. I think everyone wants to get it done. The buildup will never now meet the oh, nice. Tell your wife thank you, Brian. Well, what the episode will be will never live up to the, you know, all the weight, which is just gonna make my anxiety real bad. So I hope your Sunday's good. Do something fun. Enjoy your time. Cross your fingers that the weather's not too bad.
They keep pushing it back.
Yeah.
It's just gonna be rain.
But thank you for spending some time with us. Thank you for brainstorming. To those who made it today and those who see it in the future, feel free to add your thoughts, hopes, dreams, all that good stuff. All right. Bye.